Okay, so whenever are you guys ready to go? Because I can do the countdown now if you're ready. Yeah. Yeah. And you're not going to hear my one. So I'm going to do three, two, and then start it. So three, two. Oh, sure. Sure. Shit. Okay, you ready, Todd? All right. Three, two.
Welcome to Making Do in Hard Times, where we explore how to keep your digital presence up to date and relevant during this time of crisis. Twice a week, we will live stream conversations about how organizations are making do, whether that's working from home, publishing emergency updates, or operating on shoestring budgets. Topics will range from content strategy during emergencies to refreshing your web kitchens. And our guest today is also a web chef, our director of technology, Mike Minetsky. Hello, Mike.
Hey Todd, how's it going?
Going good. Welcome to Making Do.
Thank
So
you.
today we're going to talk about how you can use a few simple technologies to bring a legacy website back to life or potentially avoid or delay any CMS migration or major update or upgrade. A lot of people are facing budget issues right now. Spending is being put on hold. People are having to maybe suddenly have to integrate new devices and experiences into an
hmm
existing older website. And we are here to talk about one way to do that relatively inexpensively. So, Mike, take it away. What is on your mind about how people can do this?
So, for a long time, I've been kind of fascinated with using like the web itself as an API and being able to pull content directly from like a website without having to access the CMS uh, uh, or the database that's powering it. So, really being able to create like an API from like websites. And just recently came across a tool that does that using GraphQL. And GraphQL is a query language. It's a API server that's very easy for like the consumers, the people like the like people that are building from that API to use. So it makes it very easy to pull content and create queries, and it's very easy for people to learn, and everybody on the front end absolutely loves it, and it's kind of taking the web by storm. And I just kind of was wondering, well, somebody must have tried this, and yeah, they did, and it actually works pretty well. And I have an example with a very with a website that's very much in need of a redesign, and I can kind of show some of that today.
Yeah. So right before we get into the screen sharing and the demo of how all of this works, for people who aren't familiar with terms like GraphQL and API and all of that, I'll try to reframe that explanation. Let me know if you feel that this is accurate.
hmm
So there's this tool that you found that uses this technology called GraphQL, and it can scrape a website. It can visit a website and pull information off of it and collect it in a different way. So it could look at a website and figure out, well, this is an article. This is the title of the article. This is the author. This is when it was published. Here's the
hmm
text. Here's this image, without having to attach directly to that website's CMS or without having to access the HTML files that have been uploaded to a
hmm
web server. It just visits it in a browser, can figure out where all of that information is. It packages it in a slightly different way and then makes it available to do something with, right?
hmm
And that's the API part. That's the, hey, I've got information and you can do something with it. And here are some instructions on how to do that.
hmm
And so some of the things you could do with it would be uh, building a new front end for the website if you wanted to go that far.
hmm
You could attach it to a different kind of device, like you could figure out ways to scrape photos and put it into an online photo album somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
or I don't know how feasible this would be, but another example might be finding video content and being able to shuttle that video content over to an Apple TV app.
Yeah, and actually, like being able to turn your existing website into something that like a iOS or Android app can consume is actually a great use case for this. So let's say that you have like your online store and you want that content to show up on in your iOS app. This is a way, without having to change anything about your CMS, you can get that data into a way that an iOS app can consume and display. So yeah.
Well, let's look at so you want to share an example of something that you put together on the fly using a site that you're familiar with.
Yes.
I think that seeing a concrete thing would be really helpful.
Yeah. And so yeah, here, let me share my screen. And so this is the Labrador Rescue that I work with, and this actually happens. The first dog that's showing up here, it happens to be the dog that I'm fostering right now. And as you can see, the website's probably in need of a redesign, of an update. But one thing that's been holding back that update is that the management side of it, how dogs end up on the website, is tied in with a lot of back of the house information about dogs, like who's fostering them, where they're being fostered, their medical records, and all this stuff. And rebuilding that on a different platform and modernizing it is a pretty serious undertaking, and it's a very small local rescue, and without an IT department, it's all volunteer run. So one of the choices they actually had to make was this: are they going to redo the website, or are they going to build like a shelter to be able to house more dogs? And they decided to go with building the brick and mortar as opposed to building the website. And so I've been wanting to kind of like update this, and one of the problems is that there is no API, or there's no way to get this information besides just going to this website. And that's where this GraphQL Scraper comes in. And so the way that it works is, on the left-hand side is you put together a query, and the query is just the same way that you would style the web page. So you're just looking for, like, there's a HTML table on the page, and then like there's rows in that table, and from that, like, that creates the list of dogs, and then inside of that there's there's like the cell that has the picture and the information on the left hand side, and information on the right hand side. And what you get back is all that information that you see on the web page. So let's just run it again now that I've updated it, and it now Jazz, the dog that I'm fostering, is the first one. You can see that first of all, it updates right away. So right before the call, I went in there and I added a new update for him. And so and it pulls in the info in an organized way that now, like, a new website that's being built in any technology really can easily get this information and then keep it updated. So anytime anybody makes an edit on your old website, your new website can get automatically updated.
And this would assume that you have some other kind of front end built that can take this structured data that you see in the right hand column and theme it, right? Display the dog's name, with a certain style, and underneath it, color, gender, the most recent update, image, things like that. So one way, then, I'm guessing from this method that you're suggesting, one way that you could breathe new life into your old website is you actually keep your old website running because you're used to the CMS, or you can't afford to do an upgrade or something at this time. You keep it running somewhere, and it might be in a place that's not accessible to the public. It might just be something that's behind some kind of login wall or something. But then you put up a new template on a new website.
Exactly.
And so something like that would be, once you get this system set up and you build your template, you basically have a brand new looking website. And you could maybe even do some interesting things with the content, like maybe move it around a little bit. But you now have a new website without having to do a migration, without having to do an upgrade of your CMS or any of that.
Yeah, and maybe we'll do another episode about this. Is the next thing that I'm kind of playing around with this is making like a swipe left, swipe right Tinder clone with these dogs. Yeah, exactly.
And so you could easily do that by creating, some kind of very simple iOS or Android app, and you're pulling the same information that you would use for a new front end for a website into this app, and having a completely different experience of looking for dogs to adopt or foster.
Exactly. And it's the other advantage of kind of like approaching this or creating this this intermediary step is that this this server or this service can move from pulling information from your old existing website to pulling information from a new and updated CMS, or pulling that information from both places into a front end that you've already built. So it's also a it's a path to an upgrade, and it's not just like a sort of patch, right? So it can be like a full migration. It can be part of a much more thoughtful migration plan than, well, this is the best we can do, so we're just going to scrape the website, because there are inherent problems with that, right? Like, I mean, obviously, like if like somebody mistypes something, or if like something in the HTML structure changes, like like the things break. But once you have this in place, and once you have a website that's consuming a GraphQL API, it's very easy to change that, what is powering the information that's in that API.
Got it. So this methodology can be used not only to replace an old website, but it can also be used to take multiple legacy websites, or even multiple websites, your old website and your brand new website, and merge them into a single content or data stream to be used on an app or on yet another website or whatever. So that way you can still maintain, like, let's say you have, as many organizations do, you wind up with a company site, and then maybe there's a separate blog, and then there's maybe 4 microsites for these events that you hold every year, and they're all built on different CMSs, or half of them are static HTML and half of them aren't. If you wanted to quickly and relatively inexpensively merge all of this into one stream, so that you can either replace all of these 4 websites with a single one, or have that information available on an app or to some event service or whatever, you could use this technique to pull information from all of those different sites and supply it in one single content API, one consistent data stream.
Exactly. And GraphQL, like it doesn't need to scrape a website. It can pull information from an SQL database. It can pull information from a document database, and there's lots of examples of it being used that way. And there's even sort of fully built out solutions that sort of facilitate that multi-backend approach. So
got it.
Yeah. So this can be like a very it can be a part of a thoughtful plan, as opposed to a emergency sort of fix.
Is this the kind of tool that could be used to actually assist in the migration of a platform from an old CMS to a new CMS?
Yeah, as long as like everything that you need to migrate is on the website, right? So if there's like backend information or stuff that isn't like displayed for users, or if you need to log in to see certain types of information, and like go to a different part of like that isn't the website, but yeah, if everything you need is if everything you need you can see in a browser, absolutely, and it may actually be an easier and faster way, particularly if the content isn't being updated, or if it's templated enough that you can really trust it. So like on this website, like part of the thing that's a little bit scary is that you actually have to type in like paragraph tags and I tags into like an open text field. So it's really like it can be anything, right? So it's hard to be able to count on what's coming in. But on a lot of websites that are powered by a more modern CMS, that's actually like that. You kind of get that out of the box anyway, and it's easy to sort of parse out those parts.
So in thinking about legacy CMSs, some of the challenges that people face are things like it's hard to maintain because it's some old software platform and not that many people know about it, or let's say you've lost some members of your staff. These days that might be due to layoffs, for example, and now suddenly you've inherited this web platform that you're not very familiar with, that's a bit out of date. So there might just be issues with it being legacy for institutional knowledge reasons. Hey, why is it like this? Who built this? So you may be thinking about like, we need to get a new website for that reason. Or maybe there are security issues or vulnerabilities. Maybe the platform that you are working with has been end of life or will be end of life, and there aren't security updates being issued for it. That might be another reason why having a legacy site is a nuisance, or worse, a liability. And using this kind of method, you could still run those old sites, but you just kind of hide them somewhere where they aren't accessible to the public and people can't hack them, but you can still be pulling the information from them, whether it's directly from the database through queries in GraphQL, or scraping the site.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's like that's actually a pretty I think it's an underutilized migration path, and something that like certainly more clients that we come across, would be able to take advantage of. And it also allows you to take a more iterative approach to what you're changing about your website, and reduce the need for a expensive and long migration before you start being able to get the benefits of the new site that you're redesigning, or and that can be like performance and SEO and all the things that like your users, your customers, or your readers like really care about, and being able to bring those advantages to bear a lot quicker.
Got it. So we do a lot of work in Drupal. And Drupal 7 is going to be end of life. I think about a year after Drupal 9 is released. Is that roughly the timeline?
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah. So we're looking at a Drupal 7 end of life at some point in 2021. How could this technology, this technique, be used to either delay or simplify a Drupal 7 to Drupal 8 or Drupal 9 upgrade?
It's I mean, it can be used like, so the GraphQL can be used in a number of different ways. One of them is this scraper that I've put together here. So that is if you, like, let's say that you've inherited a Drupal site and you did not get any Drupal developers with it. This is one way to be able to get the information that's in it, turn into a structured API, and then build the new website in whatever technology you're familiar with. The other way is to directly access the database or the Drupal REST API through GraphQL, and then create the front end from that. So so there's a number of different ways that can be part of the migration path, and the other other way they kind of look at it is that this can end up being a pivot point. So let's say that you had that Drupal 7 site and needed to update it, but all the content in it is static except for one thing. It's like the blog that gets updated, and the migration of the content and everything else is going to be a large project. But you have the opportunity to launch the website, or you have the designs done already. That's probably the best example, right? Like you're ready to go, and then the larger project, like you're through the design phase, working with a great agency, and all of a sudden, like the build phase, there's no budget for it. So what do you do? And this allows you to take advantage of those designs, put that up as a new website, and then still use the old CMS until like the next budget year comes along and that kind of thing. And because it's because that can be hosted behind an internal network or a firewall, it gives you more flexibility as to when you would need to end of life Drupal.
And so this is an interpretation or a version of what some people are calling like decoupled or headless architecture. This would be one way to potentially do that.
Yeah.
Would it be possible for somebody, if they were, because doing something like this won't necessarily be cheaper in the long term if your ultimate goal is to move from one platform to another, but it does allow you to stretch your spend or to make use of 2 or 3 years worth of budget rather than having to fight for that lump sum in one single fiscal year to have to do both a front end and a back end migration all at once.
Exactly. Yep.
So you could do something like, let's say you have the Drupal 7 site and you're thinking ahead, like we're going to have to move this to Drupal 8 or Drupal 9. You go through maybe a redesign process or maybe not, but you prop up a Drupal 8 or Drupal 9 site and you build that theme. And all you're doing is building the theme. You're not moving over content or fields or users or any of that stuff. You could still run a Drupal 7 site behind some kind of firewall or protection and use a technology like this to just provide the bridge, the API from the Drupal 7 site to just the theme that is the new Drupal 8 or Drupal 9 site. And then next year, you can do the actual migration of the content and the data.
Exactly. Or like, let's say that like most of your website is run by your team, right? But there's like portions of the website that goes through a complicated backend process that has multiple reviewers, and that's all built out in Drupal 7. And that's like the big meat of the project, right? That's the part that's really kind of hard to get funded and is going to either take your team months and months to recreate with all the different levels of permissions and workflows and all that kind of stuff. This allows you to just create like the stuff that's simple or that's run by your team and doesn't require that large lift, and allows you to leave all that stuff that's probably very important, but maybe a big blocker to doing a single migration.
Got it. So for those who have something complicated about the back end of their website, whether it's just a lot of complicated fields and content types and things like that, or workflows, user permissions, content governance, and all of these integrations and all of this stuff that's potentially very complicated in the back end of the site. A technique like this allows you to say, let's not worry about all that stuff right now. But let's get the benefits of a more modern theming system in a new CMS. But still retain the old one because it has all the business logic in it.
Exactly.
Got it. Exactly. Great. Well, we have just a couple of minutes left. Mike, is there anything else that you would want to add about GraphQL or this technique, scraping, creating content APIs? Anything that you feel would be useful for somebody who's thinking about wanting to breathe new life into an old website?
Yeah, I think that's one caveat in all this, which is this sounds like a great way to be able to push forward and move your project without having to undertake some of the most expensive parts. And that doesn't mean that it doesn't come without risks. And like one thing that comes to my mind when what kinds of risks this potentially introduces are that there's right now there's a run on COBOL developers. Because all these legacy systems that are running unemployment benefits in states have never been actually, nobody ever took the last steps to kind of update or fix the back end. So this, while it kind of gives you the opportunity to move things forward, you have to have a plan, and you have to have a longer tail funding to actually do that work, or you're going to be looking for PHP developers or Drupalers for your Drupal 7 site.
Right direction. It's
right.
Not the final. Yeah, okay, got it.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Mike. This has been very informative. So as I said at the top of the show, this is a twice weekly live stream. We're going to be doing this again next week. Please check out our blog for more information on this topic. We're going to do a follow-up post that includes a recording of this, as well as a transcript and some related links so you can take a look at some of these tools yourself. When we are doing another live stream, be sure to follow us on Twitter @4kitchens or on our LinkedIn page, and or subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you'll get a notification that we're going live once again. So until then, have a good weekend. We'll see you again on Tuesday, April 14th, where our topic will be, we don't know yet, but it's going to be good. That's the joy of a live stream. So see you then, everybody. Have a good weekend.
Bye.